welcome to today's Vivit webinar. Great user experience starts with continuous testing. Next slide. Yes, thank you. Today's webinar is brought to you by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. My name is Mark Herbert. I'm your host today. I am a member of Vivit, and I am the leader here in Arizona, as well as a member of the Vivit Board of Directors, currently serving as Vice President, and I run the local chapter here in Arizona. And today's speakers we're honored to have with us Antoine Aymer, Global Mobile Lead for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, as well as Robert Gutierrez, Solution Architect for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Just a couple of housekeeping items to mention, folks, before we turn it over to our presenters today. This live session is being recorded, so it will be available to Vivit members after the fact. A link will be made available later in the week for that. And we will have a Q&A session, so you will be able to add questions to the questions pane in your command bar there. If you want to go to the next slide, there's a nice picture of it we can show. Yeah, so if you want to go ahead, folks, and as you have questions, go ahead and type your questions into the questions field there. We'll add those to our queue and make sure that those get addressed. Whatever questions don't get addressed during the call itself, we'll certainly try to get addressed offline and provide the full answers to all the questions later on when the presentation's made available. So with that, we're again honored to have with us Antoine and Robert. So Antoine, I turn it over to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great start. Hey guys, wherever you're based, welcome to this very exciting webinar where we're actually going to talk about, well, two topics, user experience and continuous testing. So I'm a big fan of history and find out who are the biggest innovators in terms of digital transformation and mobile app testing. So this is a very nice story what actually RBS went through. So if you recall, RBS spent almost a decade leading up to 2008 trying to get bigger and bigger. And actually from 2008 to 2014, they tried very hard to become famous, and they did succeed by actually losing £46 billion in 6 years. And given RBS was on 81% by the taxpayer, this had a horrible and terrible impact on people. So, if you have to step back and really understand what happened, in reality, customers had challenges making business with RBS. So it was taking up to 5 business days to open a business banking account. And as a user, as a customer, you would actually get different rates depending on how you would approach the bank, whether it's online, in branch, or by phoning the call centers. In late February 2014, the new CEO from RBS, Ross McEwan, outlined the company's strategy for the following years, and RBS transformed the customer's experience. And you can see now that the busiest branch is not actually a branch, is actually a train. And doing the math, you can see that over 2.1 million customers are using the mobile app every week. So that's absolutely very impressive. But again, no matter the industry, whether you're in retail, in manufacturing, in services, in utilities, our mobile users and the mobile consumers reach just their mobile experience based on the speed of response, on the performance, on the quality of the service they get. But the complexity here for all of us as mobile stakeholders is hidden behind these very user-friendly app interfaces, leading to a feeling that everything is simple and should work flawlessly. So we expect all those mobile apps, again, whether it's weather apps, whether it's bank, whether it's airline, whether it's any sort of apps, to work seamlessly regarding our choice of technology, regardless of our operating system, regardless of the gestures, regardless of the various settings on our phone, regardless of our locations, and regardless of the broader context. But beyond that, we also expect the mobile apps to be valuable, to be elegant, to be useful, and among other things. But now we know, and Amazon actually setting the ground on that matter, is that a good user experience is moving beyond the device, beyond the app itself. And we want, as users, I'm always taking a step back when I sort of present and having a workshops on user experience. What do we want? We want, and we're starting to expect, that we can switch devices and continue where we left off. Things about a video, about a working asset, anything. So in the last weeks, I've actually spent a bit of time doing some workshops in the US, and I really wanted to share with you, and hopefully I can have it here on the screen. I asked the questions to the audience. What do you think are the top characteristics to a good quality UX? So in other words, what do you think is user experience? And it was very interesting because in the room we had various people. Some was from the development team, we had testing, we had a lot of business, we had marketing, we had IT, we had management, we had operations. And in the end, quality UX actually means a lot of things in companies' organization. So it goes actually just beyond the core IT team, whether it's functionality, whether it's speed, and we know there's various attributes of UX that we don't even have here, like the proactivity of apps, the security of apps, and all of that makes it very complex for us as stakeholders to say, well, we need to deliver a quality app, but this quality app actually is based on various aspects that we have to nail. So certainly not an easy task that we're all facing. So obviously the ugly, hairy monster in the room is fragmentation. And it's really the scariest impediment to validating this user experience that we've just talked about now. And the practically infinite permutations really impose a huge challenge to testers, whether it's the device characteristics, the form factors, the OS, the platform diversities, the APIs and the services that we have to update as well and maintain on top of the front-end technology. We need to understand how the app reacts depending on how the users are setting the various parameters on the phone, whether it's disabling GPS, disabling Bluetooth, going from 4G, 3G to Wi-Fi, all those usage patterns that also are an impediment for us when we want to validate this user experience. And obviously the big one is obviously the user's context. How can we make sure that whatever development and testing practice is actually based on real users' context? So there are various frameworks that we can actually use to start our mobile testing practice, and one of the main framework actually still being used is this 2011 framework, which is actually very interesting because it covers most of the aspects that I've described earlier. However, there are still some missing quality, like make sure localization is properly done, and a few aspects. So I would encourage you just to have a look at this framework, maybe offline. Also, to better structure mobile testing, there are various heuristics that are going to be very interesting just to make sure you increase the coverage of your testing. So one which is not necessarily that recent, but extremely relevant, is one done by mobile expert Jonathan Cole. I slashed up Fern. So every letter actually stands for one of the practice or one of the testing scenarios that you have to validate. So again, various heuristics that you can take into account as you want to cover and increase the coverage of mobile these mobile aspects. So the big product that we have, the core of our solution, is HP Mobile Center. So the way we position this product today is Mobile Center is the single gateway that expands HP software technology, whether it's UFT, QTP, load runner, or even monitoring solutions to the mobile technology. So it works natively again with all our ADM product, application delivery management product, our IT operations management products, including Security Fortify. I will touch base on this very interesting aspect a bit later. So Mobile Center really enables our customers' mobile team to redefine the mobile experience and really understand that everything that you have to do has to be about assessing and validating the user experience. So this product really helps you deliver and help you implement a predictable and repeatable mechanism, but not just for automation functional testing, for any kind of testing, including security testing, monitoring, but also it will help you improve your mobile app throughout its life cycle. And we have, amazing distinctive competence that we are bringing. And let me give you an example. So many of you today are automation experts. So you're spending a lot of time into, scripting, into building the right scenarios. But when it comes to mobile apps, how can you make sure that your tests that you are going to automate are precise and accurate enough to reproduce how the users will actually interact with your app in the real world? And it's certainly not easy. There's always a waste in our work as we do automation scripting. So what we've done here in Mobile Center is we are enabling you to track real users' metrics through an analytics tool called Appulse Mobile. And Appulse Mobile data is directly integrated into Mobile Center, so you actually know what to test on. And that's the whole vision that we have about Mobile Center, that it enables you not just to do testing and various aspects of testing, but it allows you to reduce the waste of your work, increase the accuracy and precision of your testing procedures. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we support Android and iOS. In the next version, we are going to support Windows Phone. The whole Mobile Center lab is available as a private cloud, so you can implement devices remotely in a secured room or write tethered on the tester's laptop. In the next version, we will support Amazon Device Farm, where you'll be able to scale testing, record on-premise on your on-premise devices, and then run all your different scripts on a cloud-based device farm that is going to be provided by Amazon. Because you need to scale testing as well, we are including Genymotion emulators. So we do support Genymotion emulators, probably the world's leading Android emulator in the world. And something which is, this company has made huge progress in terms of trying to mimic real devices, including the accuracy of sensors, of battery, anything to do with real user scenarios. So let me run you through the few stories about what we can deliver with Mobile Center. So now let me ask you a question. And obviously, I know you're on mute, so you won't be able to respond. But think about how many apps do you have on your phone? 10, 15, maybe 50. But how many of them are you really using, right? And how many apps have you left a review of? And probably less than 5. So chances are that you only leave a review of an app if you are extremely happy or upset with its performance. So this leaves the valuable information and data from the silent majority uncollected. So this is where Appulse Mobile and Mobile Center come to play. So Appulse Mobile, which is our mobile analytics tool, lets you understand how your mobile apps is really being used, tells you the performance, track crashes, and so we can use this info, analyze this info, and summarize it to get the insight we are missing from the user's review process. So again, what I was sharing earlier by introducing Mobile Center, by combining Mobile Center and Appulse Mobile, we can help our customers' mobile team reduces the amount of mobile testing they have to do because they are receiving real-time info from their end users. So this shift actually is a fundamental one, away from I need to do testing to I know what to test on, really allows for streamlining and improvement instead of spending time looking at point A and point B of testing. So that's another very interesting aspect that we know. About 70% of mobile app performance actually stems from the network. So we cannot simply ignore the network. So HP Mobile Center is provided with network virtualization capabilities, which really provide the ability to discover real-world network conditions and visualize those conditions in a test environment. You can run simulations and you can analyze test results. And I can tell you that because you can actually virtualize network conditions, you can set up devices in your environment, and then instead of just contracting with T-Mobile, AT&T, you can just implement network conditions on your real devices, and then off you go. You're actually going to save on data plans. Okay, so we know that 80% of mobile apps unintentionally reveal potential benefits to malicious hackers. And we know that every day there's news about how poorly security is done, how impactful it is on the various industries, which is retail, whether it's banking and anything. So we know, and we have an amazing business inside HP called HP Security Fortify, and those guys are the leader on mobile testing. So again, to make it really easy for our customers to validate the various aspects of user experience, including security, with Mobile Center, we made it extremely easy for you guys to do mobile security testing without having to contract with yet another provider. So let's assume that you've implemented a continuous deployment and continuous testing framework. And then as part of your framework, not only do you want to automate the functional scripts, but you also want to automate and ship security testing left. And with Mobile Center now, we've directly integrated with Security Fortify, and you can do free security scans from Mobile Center. So again, we always take a step back in whatever we are doing and the vision we have around the product to say what matters is user experience. And user experience, again, is not just about functional and design. It also includes security. All right. So this is one of the big aspects of testing today. We know that the vast majority of testing is done manually. So we've expanded the value of HP Sprinter. So now that any testers can now create formal QC or ALM tests from informal tests. The way it works is very simple. You take your device, you plug your device in Mobile Center or tether it to your laptop, and you start playing with it. And whatever you do on your mobile device, whether you rotate, whether you are going through specific actions, HP Sprinter and Mobile Center will record everything you do. So when it goes back to the development team and said, well, I'm not sure what happened here, then with Sprinter, you can actually just go back and say, okay, Mr. Developer, here are the different actions I went through. Here's the video. Here are the device vitals. So you are giving back to the development team a full, rich report on actually what happened. So it's the replay aspect is actually very simple. So the key one, obviously, there's the sheer number of tests that we have to validate, and this is what Bob will actually talk right after my presentation of Mobile Center in a few minutes' time, is the fundamental aspect of automation functional testing. So I will let Bob talk a little bit about it later. But because, again, user experience is not just about functional, we've also integrated with LoadRunner and StormRunner to give you the ability to perform testing not using virtual users, but also real devices. And all those different type of users can be applied virtual network conditions. So again, to make it very close to how the users will actually interact with your app. Well, one of the fundamental aspects, again, here of validating user experience is anticipating when your services is up and down. So we do have HP AppPulse Active, which allows our customers to set up synthetic proactive monitoring. So now we've expanded Apple's active capabilities to real devices with Mobile Center. So the way it works is very simple. You start recording a transaction, so typical transactions the users will go through, and then Apple's Active will replay these transactions every 5, every 10, every 15 minutes, depending on the frequency you want to set, so you can anticipate and validate the performance and availability of your services before it actually impacts the user experience. And this is actually a SaaS service. So one of the fundamental aspects of this whole world, it's great to assess security. It's great to assess the design, the usability, the simplicity of the app, the performance and security. But in the end, you also have to take into account in your mobile DevOps practice the sentiment of your users. And that sounds like pretty simple, but I can tell you that very few customers are actually viewing and assessing what's happening on the app stores. And I'm meeting so many organizations that actually are telling me, well, we're actually waiting for our end users to reach out to our help desk, right? And this is not sustainable, because, the app stores are a very well-known rendezvous, very influential venue where there's a lot of enhancement requests. You can identify defects very early. And so for that matter, we've also integrated inside Mobile Center a sentiment analysis tool that allows you to aggregate and to understand what to focus on and respond to the user so you're not left behind and your app actually is still being used. Again, I think what I wanted to convey here is that user experience has to cover so many topics, so many attributes that all in all you have at a point in time to validate. And with this single gateway Mobile Center, we make it easier for you guys to start, whether it's continuous testing, as Bob will go through from a technical standpoint, to also embedded the sentiment of the user. So now let's revert to Bob here, because we want to focus a little bit on the technical aspect of what do we mean by continuous testing, right? Bob, so up to you now. I hope I did a good job by introducing it, and now let's start with understanding what we can do for continuous testing using Mobile Center and LeanFT.
Thank you, Antoine. So this audience, when we were talking last week about this presentation, I decided to move things around a little bit. I want to show some different components of the Mobile Center suite and the Mobile Center solutions than what you may have seen in the past, while still giving a good overview of our capabilities. What I'm showing here on my screen right now, which you should be able to see, Antoine, can you just validate that for me? I'm going to take your silence as agreeing, is my Mobile Center server. And connected to my Mobile Center server physically on my laptop is my Motorola Android device right here. Previously in the past, now Antoine spoke a little bit about the emulator support that we have. So I've had an Android 6 emulated device plugged in. I've had an iPhone plugged in and a Nexus 7 tablet. So we've got a good selection of devices in the library, but the only one I have available to me today is this Motorola. On the Apps tab, I have my application library. So the one I'm going to work with today is Advantage Mobile Banking on Android. Hovering over the right here, I can see my usage and my user sentiment coming from AppPulse Mobile, which gives us the real user experience and rolls that information down for me to view within the testing world. And of course, if I want to move over and see the details, I just click this hyperlink here, and it will take me to my AppPulse Mobile tenant for me to log in. Antoine mentioned a little bit about security testing being integrated into Mobile Center as a solution. So what I've pulled up in the background, this is a sample report that's been generated from AppPulse Mobile, and then within about 24 hours of when you submit that report, the app gets uploaded to our Fortify On Demand people. They run their scans, and you get an email that includes this report that comes back, giving you an idea of what kind of security risks, security issues you may have in your mobile app before you go forward. I'm going to work with a couple different testing tools today, and because of that and the compressed time frame, I've tried to do my best Rachel Ray impression and put some material in the oven, and the roast is going to come out fully cooked and ready for me to go. So I have a test that I wrote a little bit earlier using the plan module within Sprinter, Sprinter being used for interactive or manual testing. And I've opened that test into the run mode. So now I'm going to execute a test against it. I've set my app, being my Advantage Online Banking Android app, and from here I'm going to say go. The app will download itself or install itself to the device. Something I've done ahead of time just because that takes a couple seconds for it to load. And I can start my test by selecting devices. You can see I've filtered out all the iOS devices and only left the Android devices for me to work with. The run prepares, the app restarts itself, and within a couple seconds, we can see a preview of the screen. Now, sitting around the outside, I have some tools I can use for annotating screenshots and starting and stopping runs if I want to set up macros that run to speed me through a couple steps. That's more of a Sprinter type of demo, but I'm going to stay away from some of that stuff today. What I'm going to do instead is just follow the steps down below. So I can see my first step is to click on the login field. I'm actually typing on the keyboard. I'm not typing on the screen. That passed. Give it a password. That worked. Click the login button. Navigation drawer, just following through these steps. Bear with me while this runs. I'm going to skip over a couple here. Transfer $10. Click the transfer button. And lo and behold, it failed. Now I'm going to ignore that and just continue on with my test because I want to have a working test run for the next part of this. But I may still create a defect. Click logout, and off we go. So once my run is complete, screenshots, the contextual information that goes with this test are being rolled up and created into a bundle. I can then upload that into ALM, or I can save it to a file system depending on what it is that I need to do. And I'm not sure exactly why this is still taking its time processing. I may just give this one more second because I have already saved the next piece just in case something happened. But it does want to take its time processing. I want to close that. And what I've created is a manual test with a manual test run. Now the next thing I'm going to do is open up UFT. Oh, except UFT can't open while Sprinter's running. Of course it can. Which tells me I should have waited instead of allowing this to happen. Start up UFT, select the mobile type, open it up. And UFT is our traditional functional testing tool. So this would be used for running a GUI test. From here, I'm going to create a new test. It's going to be a type of GUI test, and call it transfer. Click create. I have no idea why I did that. Probably because I flustered myself. So I'm actually going to create it from the output from the Sprinter test. Instead of creating a test from scratch, what I've done is I've taken the output from Sprinter, exported that to an XML file. I can now open that XML file up in UFT, and that's going to allow me to run this back. The idea behind this is that if I'm looking at the average mobile development lifecycle, I'm going to be working in a more agile type of space. I'll have deliverables and content that's going to be coming down the pipe quite quickly. I need to release. I need to get out a release every 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, but not much longer than that. So the time that I may have had in the past to run through a full testing cycle isn't necessarily available to me anymore. And because we see such quick iterations, UI controls start to change. And components tests that may have worked for a year or two in the past now need to be a bit more disposable and therefore a bit easier to write. So by running through a manual test, I can then export that content, import it directly into UFT, and set up my record settings to grab the correct device. So here's my app, here's my device. And then I should be able to tell it to run. We're going to see I check out the device that I'm working with, reinstall the app or restart the app. And then the same steps that I followed in the manual test are now going to be run on an automated basis. So what I would do here is I would run through a manual testing at the end of my sprint before I was creating a product that I may want to release. I would retain those assets. And then when it came time with the natural latency, the natural delay before we are able to run tests against the new content, what we're going to do instead is we're going to start creating the automated regression test suite out of those original assets. So we're closing the loop and we're bringing in different components and really showing off the integrations, the capabilities we have from that perspective in the LeanFT product space. Now I'm going to close UFT now. Don't need to save any of this. And I'm going to open up Visual Studio. Added into the UFT suite is a product that we call LeanFT. And what LeanFT does is take unit testing and code-driven testing and expand it by integrating the object repository components. So giving us the ability to spy on objects. So within this C# code that I have here, we can see I've got a mobile device that I'm grabbing it by name. I've got the app that I want to load up. And then the first example is if I wanted to create an inline object, which is in this case the login button, then I can do that right here. Or I can go to my application model, which I have sitting up here with objects that have been added to it. I can go to my application model, and then I can create instantiate instances of those objects, and then call them over there. Now I've intentionally left one blank because I wanted to show the recording of this. So how I would do that is click on Open Up My Application Model, click on Object Identification Center. It's going to open up a SPY window here. As Mobile Center window as well. Wondering if my device is still locked. It's available for use. And click on SPY. I apologize, I'm not quite sure exactly what's causing the issues. My project, I want to grab the application model. SPY. I should have a Mobile Center window that wants to open with it, but I've been messing around with it so much, I don't know what's going on. Sincerely apologize. I'm going to go to PowerPoint and just show you guys a couple screenshots instead. Once I have my model defined, Antoine, do you want to take back control?
Sure, I need to have control back, and I'll be able to share.
Thank you.
All right, hold on. All right, and let me put it full screen, and off you go.
Thank you. Once I have my application model defined, I now have a set of tests that are programmatic and driven by code, and I've got a set of tests that would be used and integrated against the GUI. Now, one of the things that's interesting about LeanFT is that I can use it as a traditional unit testing tool where I would run purely code-driven assertions and code-driven analysis or verifications. I can also use it as a functional testing tool where I can integrate it against my UI and run tests against that. So what that gives us the ability to do, next slide please, is commit and validate those changes and then integrate my LeanFT tests into my build pipeline. Next slide. Once I have them built in, I can either run them separately, so I can run the DLL that's been created, or the jar file if I'm doing this in Eclipse instead of Visual Studio. I can run the jar file, and that will allow me to pop open Mobile Center and run my functional tests, which makes this a tool, just like everything else we can do with UFT and Sprinter and Load Runner, Performance Center, and Storm Runner, where we can upload it into our test management systems. We can do the same thing with LeanFT tests. Next slide. But furthermore, we have additional capabilities of driving the unit test side of LeanFT tests directly against our build servers. So we can, next slide if you don't mind. We can load up the test, and you can build this one at a time. We can load up the test, we can validate or run that as part of the build process, as part of my continuous integration process, and then ensure that when we move to the traditional QA side, when we start running our functional tests against the app, we have a higher level of assurance that that test is going to perform. Thank you, Antoine.
All right, so we always also have an eye on what Analyst has been sharing. So on this one, so Gartner released, I think it was in February or January, or December actually, December 2015, just on the screen here, recognized HPE as the highest ranked leader on software test automation, and they also including mobile testing capability. So always, some things to have an eye on. So one of the key things that I've touched base a little bit on it earlier. How can we make sure that whatever testing that Bob went through from a technical standpoint really mirrors the way the users are going to interact with the app? So how to boost mobile testing based on big data analytics and mobile analytics. And actually, I co-authored a book called the Mobile Analytics Playbook.com. You can go on that website as well to have a digital copy. And on that book, you'll find three main chapters. There's going to be one about mobile testing. What are the fundamentals of mobile app testing? The second one is about mobile analytics and feedback. So what are the various ways of tracking real user experience, whether it's on the GUI level, whether it's on the app level, on the OS level, on the App Store level, using various techniques, and also what is mobile and the mobile feedback, and the limitations of feedback and analytics when it comes to measuring the real user experience. And the last chapter covers sort of an emerging topic, which is how to apply and how best to apply analytics and feedback to enhance mobile development and testing. And we also cover various aspects of using analytics, such as what are the impact of the SDKs and libraries you're going to use on the user experience, and how about privacy and regulations law, again, to protect personal data. And the thing is, I've met a few organizations that actually use more than 20 and 30 SDK in the app, and sometimes you don't control third-party code. So how do you make sure that as you want to control the user and make sure that you are enhancing the accuracy and precision of your testing practices, how do you make sure that the tools and means to do that actually are not impacting in the turn this user experience? So something to have an eye on. And again, it's a free book available either on techbeacon.com or right on this little microsite that we've built, the mobileanalyticsplaybook.com.
Antoine, if I can just add one more thing. I've figured exactly what I did wrong. In order to make it easier for you guys to see my screen, I actually lowered my resolution. So that dropped my window back. I'm going to could I have control back for a moment? Because I would like to show this.
Okay, sure.
So as I mentioned earlier, I can go into Visual Studio or Eclipse, click on Object Identification Center, and that's going to load up both my Object Spy Lab, which looks a little bit like this before I start spying, and it's going to load a window that has a preview to my application under test. In this case, it's a mobile app. It could be something else. Now, what I had done is I had moved it off to the left, and I couldn't see it, and then, of course, working in a live demo is a fun thing to do in front of several dozen people. So I click the Start Spying button. And I can see all of the attributes that belong to that device. Click Spy. Oops, sorry. And as I hover over elements, the path to that element is going to be identified. So in this case, I want to add the transfer button. Click that, it identifies it, and then from here, I can either directly create the code by clicking the copy button here, or I can add it to my repository. As we can see down below, now my transfer button has been added in, which makes it available for me to use within my test itself. One of the nice things that I get from this is to change the device. So if I want to start this test and run it again, first of all against an emulated Android device, I can write the test once, and then all I need to do is change the device that I'm checking out to run it against a separate, different type of device. Or if I have a significantly different UI, I can create another application model that has the same tags, the same elements, but maybe my language are different for localization purposes or for a global type of deployment. And my test can be written once and run across all those localized versions. And we find that a LeanFT test, when it's well written, becomes an incredibly robust asset because of the flexibility that you get from code. It doesn't handhold as much as UFT does. It doesn't give as much assistance, I should say, but it gives you the ability to reach in on a deeper level and to run a longer lasting, perhaps, functional test. I'm going to stop showing my screen.
All right, Bob. Can you maybe tell us about maybe a few questions that when you are presenting this sort of demo to customers, what are maybe the typical questions they would ask and things that we can maybe share with the audience here? Sure.
So one of the biggest pieces of interest is around how do we make this test so it becomes reusable. And reusability, we often get into conversations around, and Antoine, you and I have had some really good offline conversations about this, with looking at how Google, as they've moved from being simply an iPhone clone to introducing their own design models with material design, how do we still create a reasonable facsimile of a cross-platform test, right? And the obvious answer is, well, lots of times functionality should be different. The one I always go back to is a scroll wheel, so a calendar picker, where I've got on iOS, I would have these scroll wheels that many of us are familiar with, but on newer versions of Android, I have a text box with a radio button list. And that's a significantly different paradigm. The flatter design versus of the monochromatic or the single flat colors they're using in material design versus what they do in iOS. But using a LeanFT test, I've started to separate my functionality of the test itself from the underlying application model. And that's one of the reasons that we have this separate piece in place. That's definitely one of the first things we're asked. Another one that we talk about would often be, how do we make tests that can be run earlier on? So going back to the old business analysis adage or project management adage of finding a problem earlier on makes it less expensive to resolve. By taking an asset that we can first use as a unit test and then developing that asset later on into what becomes a functional test, we're able to put an additional driver on the creation of quality unit tests in the beginning. The natural counterpoint to that is, well, I thought tests were supposed to be written twice. Unit tests should come from a different set of source than a functional test. And although that's true in the clean room of theory, in reality, when we take a look using our predictive analytics capabilities at what kind of test coverage we see in the field with client products, the real test coverage versus the actual use of the application is significant. The gap is significantly bigger than what people believe it is, or what testers, what companies, organizations believe it to be. I was working with a company earlier, or not too long ago, where we ran predictive analytics against their application, and they came back and said, well, you got about 25% test coverage, and they thought that they were a true COE that had done incredible levels of test coverage, and they were starting to step away from, okay, how do we create more content and create better content? And until we reach that tipping point where we have duplication on multiple different aspects, just like we would with functional testing versus performance testing, well, why wouldn't we leverage the assets we can create in unit testing and turn that into a functional test? What it also does is give us a nice byproduct of creating a real weight behind unit tests instead of being seen as perhaps a little bit more of just a chore. It becomes a valuable asset to the long-term usability and user experience of the application. Do we have?
Okay, great. Hey, Antoine and Bob, thank you so much. This has been very, very informative, and I thought it was very cool to see all the different solutions working together. All the different tools working together across your presentation to give folks the solutions that they need, or different ideas for how they can solve their mobile testing. That's really neat to see. Folks, that's going to do it for today's presentation. Wanted to let you folks know that Antoine and Bob are available offline. If you have additional questions, you can send them in, and we'll make sure they get to Antoine and Bob, and they can respond to those. Also wanted to let you folks know, don't forget, if you are planning to go to HPE Discover this year it'll be June 7th through 9th out in Las Vegas. Use your special Vivit link to register. You see it referenced here in the slide as Vivit members, so that you can receive your Vivit member discount when registering. It's supposed to be a real good event. Looking forward to it, as it always is, and we'll hopefully see more of some of this stuff we learned about today with the Mobile Center and all the different solutions. It was nice to see LeanFT up there too, being added to the mix as well, so that's really cool stuff. So if you're planning to go to Discover, don't forget to use your Vivit member registration link. And again, if you have any other questions, make sure you send those in, and also if you would go ahead and do us a favor and complete the short survey, and at the end of this presentation, and opt in to hear more information from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. That would be great. It helps us to make these presentations even better in the future when you provide your feedback through the survey. So thanks in advance for taking the time to do that. So I think that's it, folks. Thank you again for your attendance and your participation. Thank you to Antoine and to Bob for joining us and for talking us presenting for us today. Thanks to all the Vivit staff for helping put this together. And until next time, this is Mark Herbert. I hope to talk to you again down the line, and talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.